Okay, first up today I shall explain something I realized at 11 years old while I was doing my homework in the back of my mom's car one day. The definition of Einstein's equation, what is E equals mc squared. In basic current understanding of this equation, it is energy E equals mass times composition multiplied by the remaining total of itself. But what does that mean? Basically it is their algebraic formula of reality itself and is a base template that can be applied universally to every other model of stellar mathematics, which from what I've observed, is true. Even when applied to the theory of cosmic dimensional expansion of the universal evolution theory model, or better summarized as the alpha to omega dimensional field theory, we find that Einstein's proposed template fits their model of the model's region covering the expansion era. Here in this section of the universal model's algorithm you have the vibration that was caused by the nonlinear sterile particles' indifference to the primordial present particles of helium and hydrogen that gives way to the vibration or the ohm or word, that is the kinetic friction of their opposing indifference that led to the key factor of gravity's first formation. Gravity in turn caused the formation of space and time as a result, which would technically be considered as the beginning of existence. This merger of time and space fused together by gravity's effect led to the collapse and expansion of the universe into the strong and weak nuclear fields, which caused the formation of the first solid particle mass to form. Then their presence of matter entered into the state of particle decay, which was measured by the merger of time, space and particle mass multiplied by its total sum. Just as the other two expansion eras or dimensional field theory models displayed. This process is the explanation through application as to what E equals mc squared mean. As I said in the last video to the depiction of Hushor, I cannot follow him along the path he must travel, for it is within the celestial realm that lay beyond the spiritual dominions. In the spiritual realm, this bridge into the celestial realm often appears as a stairway leading up into a place beyond the light, and is the path of transcendence that follows after a person's time in spiritual form ends. Once all ties to the physical world have been released and the spiritual body begins to both fade and stretch, as if being pulled towards an irresistible destination that lay just beyond the grasp of knowing or understanding. Since the spiritual realm is governed by spectrums of light wave frequencies, and all objects that we would consider as matter are defined by boundaries set by the variations of those frequencies, when trying to understand transcending to the next dimensional frame of the fifth dimensional cycle of the universe from a fourth dimensional frame, we would perceive a transition from multiple fields of light variations transitioning into a more spread out pattern of refracted rays of light held together on a multi-layered quasi-crystal type structure of bridgeways that create a network of variant light frequencies that have transitioned into a vaporous state of unified particle matter. This effect becomes apparent when observing our third-dimensional structure of solid particle, carbon-based forms, bound and fused by 6 combined fields of particles. But if we are third-dimensional being, how are our carbon-based bodies fused by 6 fields? Because, starting from the first dimensional frame, we have the kinetic energy build-up from the particle imbalance that creates gravity. The gravity creates the strong nuclear force at the core and a weak nuclear field that is the still, expanding first particle field. That first field shall reach the edge of the expanded observable universe and rebound its inertia inward.
R2-D2, get back here this instant. Master Luke said what? I swear sometimes you make me think you've stripped your head bolts. I'm surprised they even validated your warranty. You know, if you're not careful, Master Luke will have you recycled into a coffee cup. And it would serve you right, always running off on some harebrained notion. What do you mean? R2, you should be grateful that I'm here to get you out of these messes. Don't yell at me. I'm just a protocol droid. If you want to yell at somebody, yell at that guy. He's the director.
The two-dimensional fields will intersect at a certain point. We would perceive this as a sound wave radio frequency, and the aspect at the center would be a vibrational kinetic energy photon charge or ion and gamma waves in deep space. When these two fields converge is when the moment of expansion began and the first fusion of solid matter began. But in the last universal cycle, notice there were two fields, now there are three fields as we are in the 3D universe, but those particle fields that govern the formation of the universal structure. This respectively multiplies each time the governing fields return and converge simultaneously as the universal structure will collapse in on itself, creating a new foundation of particles bridged and made possible by the fused fields of the previous structure that got merged into a new field at the collapse of the previous field. So in the 3D aspect we would have 6 fields that bind every object together and would be observed in a 3D perspective. That's why. So taking that into account, in the 4D universal structure there would be 12 fields that comprise each object within it. Which leads me to my conclusion that the 4D universe will be governed by the light wave spectrum in its tesseract-structured transcendental formation. As the 3D model of the object, 4 fields multiplied respectively to make it a 3D object, making that an 8-field base structure, but to maintain form as would be necessary to exist within this 4th dimensional aspect of the universe, but then add another 4 fields to that structure, as each field would be calculated by multiples of 1, so it would be 4 times 1 times 1 times 1. As the 3rd dimensional matter fuses to bridge the 4th dimensional field aspect, which 12 to reach the denominator of dimensional standard of governing force, that is the law of the 4D matter, that is, tesseract in style and design, as the 3D cube will duplicate itself into the tesseract structure, still encompassing the 2D aspect of contour definition. This respective progression shall continue, never identical to the last cycle's structure, but containing the laws that universal aspect on a compressed level within it field's foundations. Anything that does not adhere to these laws of dimensional, particle physics not only will not be capable of taking on any sort of form, but that failed object would be drawn towards the pull of the converged mass of that aspect's Big Bang, most likely being swallowed in after being stripped of all non-compliant particles and repetitiously slingshotted around the core until all non-compliant particles are removed, a process that would lead up to what we would call an antimatter explosion. This cycle would expand but basically remain similar in its stage-by-stage expansion of its overall structure. This bridgeway of the expanding particle structure would be where the branches of God would be centered around, and passing this basic outlined model of formation then decay to collapse. They would be at the edge and furthest distance from the central, Big Bang expansion, so to be sure to maintain themselves until the last possible moment before total collapse and entering the all-consuming black hole at the last moment, locating the neutral region or pocket bubble within the gravitational forces where they create a neutral eye of a hurricane-type neutral region or wormhole. There is where the inertia of that universal aspect will appear in his primordial void of his 4D universe, and the previous inertia or branch can pass the grand design of the universe to the next branch. As long as this cycle continues, the universe will retain life within it, and thus it shall remain in a state of eternal continuity. When there is no life to continue within the universe to continue this cycle, then the universe ends at the end of the last dimensional aspect's frame, for this cycle must last from the alpha to the omega. That is the purpose of life on a cosmic.
They cross the void beyond empty space that circles time. They see you another stubborn blind. To seek a truth you never find. Eternal wisdom is their guide. Any suggestions, Doctor?